should I do this or should I not decisions, because they're telling you it would be so cool if it did this. It would be, I think this is a waste of time. I never use that feature. And those types of feedback are the only way that you learn A, what to develop, and B, who do you want to develop for, right? Because if you've got 3 or 4 different clients or 10 or 20 different clients that you're beta testing with, you're going to discover that, hey, you know what? This solution is way better for people in this part of my beta pool than these ones. I don't know that I want to worry about those guys. I just want to hone in on these guys because there's a lot more of them and they have more budget than these guys, right? So it comes down to client avatar discovery as well.
Yeah, and it's about the age-old painkiller versus the vitamin, right? Which is, you guys have maybe heard that analogy, which is like, a vitamin is something you will take daily, maybe sometimes you skip it, it's not a big deal, right?
Right.
But a painkiller, like if you have a splitting headache, then you need that really strong ibuprofen, right? And I think your job as a founder is to go find that painkiller to see, okay, which set of my beta customers this is a painkiller for. They can't live without it.
Totally.
Right?
Totally.
They're pounding on the table and they're saying, I need this yesterday. And they're gonna put up with a solution that's not perfect. That still has issues.
Yep.
But the problem is so acute that they will do anything.
Hey, welcome back to the show. And today I'm so excited to have with us Asim, who is going to share with us some amazing stuff about his journey and growth. Asim, tell us who you are and what do you do?
Yeah, I'm Asim Razzaq. I'm the co-founder, CEO of a company called Yotascale. And what our company focuses on is high level in the FinOps space, right? So financial operations, especially with the rise of cloud computing and now AI and generative AI and a lot of other infrastructure software like Snowflake, Datadog, and others that your audience might be familiar with if they know something about software. So as you know, that a lot of that stuff moved from CapEx to OpEx, right? So now people rent the software. It is subscription based. And sort of user based. So our company helps companies at a certain scale, like Okta, Jeffries, and others, really help make those investments more efficient for them, right? Because they can be very expensive, and there's a lot of complexity, and there's a lot of moving parts. So we help them reduce those bills. We help them invest back into the business. We help them secretly also, as you reduce that footprint, help the environment, right? Because there's a lot of resource wastage that is out there.
There is a lot of resource wastage out there, no doubt about it. And as you talk about the problem that you're solving, for those that didn't understand all the references to the software backend solutions you're talking about, what he's talking about, if I were to sum this up, is you're taking people who are building, in particular, financial software solutions and helping them streamline, make more efficient their path to building that solution and or providing a solution that already exists to people in a much easier way so that they don't have to recreate stuff that's already been done. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily financial software solutions. It's anything that you would have in the cloud. So any product that you can think of. So I think we were talking about earlier about Zoom and some other pieces of software, right? So at the end of the day, a lot of their infrastructure is running in the cloud, right? And it's costing them money because they're having to pay for all of this backend infrastructure and this cloud computing and storage and increasingly AI. And so it costs them a ton of money. And a company like Yotascale can come in and help them be more efficient in terms of delivering their software to the end consumer. In which case, if it's too expensive for them, it becomes increasingly expensive for the end user, right?
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. Yeah. And so give us the backstory. I mean, how did you get into solving that problem? Because this is a very complex problem, but you've worked with some very complicated organizations. Give us a little backstory into how did you recognize this problem as something you wanted to solve, first of all, and who are you trying to help with it today?
Yeah, so it's a problem that I had experienced myself. So a lot of my role has been a VP of engineering or a head of platform engineering. I have played that role at companies like PayPal, at eBay, but also at a number of startups. And with the advent of cloud computing, like circa 2007, 2008, it was great, right? Like Amazon came out, AWS came out with S3, their storage, and
Right.
and whatnot, and people had the option not to build a data center. But as a consumer of some of that technology, as a head of platform engineering, what I realized was that the monkey was on my back, right? Because we were building the software for the application teams at the edges, services teams, right? All the
Yeah.
building
Yeah.
blocks. And we would be asked a question like, why are you spending so much money? Right. And our answer was like, we're not spending the money, like these teams at the edges are spending the money. And it was increasingly a problem where we didn't know where the money was going. Right. So in one
Interesting.
company where I was VP of engineering, our software was in the data center, and the company was spending a ton of money in the data center, right?
Right.
To the tune of
Right.
60% of their total cash burn was going in the data center. So the board basically looked to me as the new guy, coming in who had a cloud background and experience and SaaS, to say, hey, we need to take it to the cloud and fast, right?
Yeah.
Because we need the
Yeah.
efficiencies. So the quick version is that I kind of looked at the cloud providers and very quickly realized that it would not be very easy to do, because the manageability was
Yeah.
not easy. Even though we were in the data center, we had our own financial model, which we had to rebuild in the cloud. The talent wasn't
Yeah.
there because the people
Yeah.
that we had more of an experience with the data center, not cloud services. And believe it or not, we realized that it would be more expensive, because
Yeah.
it was not about storing data. As soon as you move data, it became extremely expensive, right? And our uh,
100%.
our software required moving of the data, right? Because it was cloud disaster recovery.
Yeah. And the cost was really all in the data transfer. Is that right?
Exactly right. Exactly right. The
Yeah.
data transfer would kill us
Yeah.
effectively. So all those variables, it was quite disappointing for me, because here we
Yeah.
have a mid-stage, late-stage startup that could be saved by the cloud, but it wasn't
Right.
quite the case. And so we solved the problem differently by using commodity storage, in-house, and solve it within those 6 months. But that
Yeah.
stuck with me, right? That
Yeah.
promise of the cloud and the actual fulfillment of the promise, there was a huge gap. And I think that
Yes.
is what was kind of the key seed that was sown for me to go do something about it when I had the opportunity to go build a company in this space. After we spoke to a number of different customers at scale, like, hey, are
Yeah.
you really running into this problem? Is this really a black hole? Are you always
Yeah.
struggling with your bill?
Yeah.
Are your teams empowered to do something about it? And increasingly, the feedback was no. Yeah, we do struggle. And
Yeah.
and the world was turning more multi-cloud also, right? It wasn't just AWS, it was Google and
Sure.
Azure and a lot of the other ones. And so that was
Sure.
making it very complex.
It was very complex, and for those of you who don't understand what he's talking about here, I will tell you that for me it was a huge problem as well. I was running an offshore call center, and we had to build our own data center with our own servers, with our own storage, with our own connectivity issues with the internet, and all those things during that time frame of 2008 to really 2012. It was like, I've heard about this cloud thing. How do I implement? How do I execute what I need to on the cloud? And it wasn't until 2011-ish that we were able to successfully deploy a dialer in the cloud, which was a godsend, because I hated having big boxes of servers in our call center floor. It was crazy.
Right.
So this is a huge problem that you went out to solve. And you're talking on a much larger scale than what I was talking about. For small businesses, this is a big issue as well. So as you solve that problem for PayPal and eBay and some of those other companies, what how has it evolved to now? And Yotascale is kind of helping that journey for people, but walk us through that journey.
Yeah, that journey really, the framework that I use to explain that journey, right, is any company, especially a software startup, it goes through the following phases, right? You're in pre-product market fit, right? Then you have product market fit, then you have post product market fit, then what I call go to
Sure.
market fit, right? And we were already talking about some of your audiences that are trying to scale the business, right? So
Yeah.
the ultimate is to get to go to market fit, right? Which is a repeatable sales
Right.
cycle, which is all about scale. So you're pre-scale, post-scale. So I think in that journey, the first thing was we had to kind of figure out our niche, right? Like what is the specific problem that we are well equipped to solve that is differentiated,
Right.
right? And I think that journey takes time. That journey takes a lot of customer discovery. That journey takes a lot of patience, and that journey takes curiosity, right? Because a lot of times founders can unfortunately come in with a very set view of things, and
Right.
the market, when their views meet the market, and if they don't adapt or change or are flexible, then
Yeah.
there's a lot of heartbreak in the making, right?
Right.
So
Right.
for us, I think the big opportunity we saw was, first of all, selling it to people like my former self, which was the head of platform engineering, right?
Right.
Because
Right.
they increasingly were the ones that had the keys to the kingdom, right? Because they were the ones building
Totally.
these platforms and helping teams at the edges. That's number one.
Right.
Number two was the size of the company that we went after, right? So initially, we did
Right.
go after some of the smaller businesses and players, and certainly, by no means, I'm not saying this is not a problem for those businesses, but I think
Sure.
for us to go build a moat and a company that could be differentiated in the market, we had to focus on some of the larger players because the
For
complexity
sure.
is a lot more there. They tend to be multi-cloud, right? And you had asked like
For
how the
sure.
problem changed, right? So the problem has changed quite a bit from, hey, I'm just in one cloud provider, to, hey, I'm in multiple cloud providers. And
Yeah.
a lot of the back end stuff is costing me a ton of money, like Snowflake and Databricks and Datadog and monitoring software and all of that. And
Totally.
this thing called generative AI and AI, I'm kind of doing R&D, but I'm really concerned because when I deploy these workloads in production, it's going to cost me a ton more, right?
Right.
So I
Right.
think that's that's certainly the complexity trend. The other trend is how it hits the top line and bottom line, right? So now
Sure.
increasingly a company's cloud bill, and you can add the AI bill to that, will be the second biggest line item after payroll, right? So that wasn't the case in 2007, 2008, right?
Right.
But
Right. Right.
now it is.
All of a sudden. Yeah.
It's like it's a huge deal, and it can affect
Yeah.
your profitability, it can affect your margins, it can affect the cost of goods sold, and it
Yeah.
is a board level discussion for any company that is, Series C, post Series C, like pre IPO to
Right.
post IPO. They're all talking about, how do we
Right.
reel this in, because otherwise, the market is not going to cut us any slack, right? So we're like, well, you're spending a
For
ton of
sure.
money. So I think that's how we've seen the problem change, is that it's only become more crucial, more critical
Yeah.
for a lot of different companies. There's more awareness, but
Yeah.
increasingly, as you know, in software, there's more complexity, right? There's new trends like containers and Kubernetes and
Right.
microservices, and as I said, Gen AI, and now multi-cloud, and a lot of this infrastructure software.
Right.
So people's heads are spinning a lot of times trying to work through a lot of these things.
Well, not only are their heads spinning, but the people that pay those people have no idea what their heads are spinning about.
Right.
It's a complex issue. Is that right?
Absolutely, it's a complex issue, and you really need to treat it as what I call the fourth KPI, right? So, like in software, you have performance, reliability, you have security, right? That
Right.
everybody worries about. Now, cost is an absolutely critical piece of that. So you can
For
achieve
sure.
performance, reliability, security, but if you're doing it at a massive cost, right, spending a ton of money in cloud, then that's not going to
Yeah.
apply.
Yep.
So you have to learn to make these trade-offs really well.
I am so glad you're here, and I just wanted to take a few seconds to tell you about a program that we have assembled with a lot of our podcast guests and a lot of people who are listening to the show who are feeling the same way that they do. There's a recurring theme. You'll hear a lot of these founders talk about, I couldn't have done it without my team. I couldn't have done it without a support group of peers. I couldn't have done it without having someone to talk to that understood my feeling of isolation as an operator of my business. You see, you're not alone. It is hard running a business, and it's even harder when you know you can't express all your deepest concerns and frustrations with your executive team. It makes them nervous. It gets them scared. You don't want scared people on your executive team. So where do you turn? The Captain's Council is where you turn. The Captain's Council, it is an organization that we are put together with podcast guests, as well as people who are listening who are in the same boat. You see, peers are the only ones that can give you the type of empathy, the type of advice that only a founder or operator know and understand. Go check it out at captainscouncil.com. I know you're going to love what you see there. we have put together an organizational structure that has small group settings, a global community of founders and operators, as well as monthly and quarterly in-person events. You're going to love what you see there. I can't wait for you to check it out and enjoy the rest of this episode. Totally. Now that we understand more clearly what your company does and who you do it for, I want to take a step back and just kind of look at the way that you have been able to take Yotascale and turn it into something that it is today. And if you can do for me a favor of just kind of looking back and saying, what were 2 or 3 key decisions that you made in that growth journey to get you to where you're at today? And I'm guessing that one of those things that you've already mentioned is you scratched your own itch. You know what the problem was for people in that particular role in a tech company, but give us your perspective on maybe 1 or 2 key decisions you made.
Yeah, so I think the double clicking on that piece is that it's not just about scratching your own itch. It was also because that was the persona that was left behind. So there were some other solutions in the market, but they were catering more to finance. They weren't catering more to engineering and the head of platform engineering. And that's the feedback we got. I still remember to this day, there was a VP of engineering at, a decent sized company, and he was showing us an existing solution, was very finance oriented. And he's like, I need the answer to the following question. Like, why did I bill double from last month? Right. And he actually was swearing. He's like, when I asked the product people whose product he was using, which was finance centric, he's like, we're a platform. You can run any report you want. And he basically said, I don't freaking need a platform. I need a solution. Right.
Yeah.
And
seriously.
Give me that solution. Right. So I think those were some aha moments for us to say, whoa, okay, this is the problem that's not being solved. And the other thing we noticed was that people were really looking for a needle in the haystack, right? So they were looking for root cause, like why are the costs trending in the direction they are, and who's responsible, and why is it happening? And I remember in one of those discovery conversations, we introduced the concept of anomaly detection, which was we were talking to somebody who was just clicking, and we're saying, hey, what if we gave you the needle? You're looking at it in the haystack, but if we just gave you the root cause and the reason why there's an aberration, would that be useful? And it was literally for 30 seconds, the guy was kind of quiet. And he's like, but was like, no, I guess that would solve my problem, right? So it's sometimes, again, that curiosity of, hey, you don't have to solve the problem in a complicated way, right? You don't have to keep clicking on reports, and you might be addicted to those reports, and that's how you think the problem is solved. But there are other ways to do that. And I think the third one I will say is that some of the trends helped us tremendously, like containers and Kubernetes was a key trend that we capitalized on, and we were able to sign up some pretty major customers because they were struggling, right? So for your audience, very simply, like Kubernetes containers is a way of abstracting out a lot of the underlying infrastructure, right? It makes things high level. It makes it easy to deploy, right? So these are like building blocks that you can just use to deploy software, but it makes it a financial black hole because now you don't know who's spending the money, right? So we call it micro wastage, right? So there's a lot of stuff being wasted at a micro level, but in aggregate, it ends up being a ton of money. So I think it's recognizing that opportunity and recognizing that you have to make a bet. That's the other thing. Right? Because when it was in its early phases, there were naysayers saying, well, Kubernetes is not going to take over, right? And there might be some other trend down the road. But you as a founder, you as a person who's running the startup has to have that insight to say, no, I believe this is going to go all the way. And this is going to be becoming a de facto standard. It's going to become the operating system of the internet, right? And so I think that recognition is important. And then the final thing I'll say is saying no, because we were getting bombarded by a lot of different things, right? So people were like, well, there was this thing called cloud economics where you can do arbitrage, right? So here I have a volume-based savings you can get. And it was more like, hey, can you figure this all out for us? But our recognition was that that's not our focus. And also it is something that puts us on a collision path with the cloud provider, because the cloud providers were constantly changing these savings-based and volume-based saving types of mechanisms. And we kept saying, no, that's not our focus. And we're not going to focus on that because we don't believe I think that's a feature, but on a product type thing.
Yeah.
And it was
Yeah.
hard because customers were willing to
Totally.
throw a lot of money at us. But
Yeah.
literally, there was a time where, for example, Amazon came up and completely revamped that whole scheme. And overnight, companies had to change their website from, RI savings type companies to like now we're cloud cost management companies, right? Just because you were in that
Right.
collision path and you should have known that, right?
Interesting.
So I think those are some 3 or 4 basic things that were important in the journey for us. And
For sure.
and candidly, I'll say, like, people can sit and have a revisionist version of history and say, well, I did this amazing thing and did this amazing. But look, at the end of the day, there's a bunch of luck that is also
Yeah,
involved. You have to
there
put in
is.
the hard work, but you can't time everything. You can't time the market necessarily. Trends can change. They can go against you. So also
Right.
recognize that there is an element of that, right? Uh, and uh, and luck only really serves people who have their net in the water, right? You're not going to catch the fish if there's no
For
net in the
sure.
water.
For sure, for sure. And that leads me to the other point of the other side of that coin is that luck comes in two flavors. There's good luck and bad luck, right? I mean,
Right.
sometimes it's the timing, sometimes it's having the net in the water, sometimes it's all those things. But a lot of people feel like I got my net in the water, but oh crap, a shark just came and they pull their net out. How do you advise people who pull out too early, or maybe they try to hang in too long and they're really just not fishing in the right pond? They're looking for shark, they're looking for salmon in a lake and they're not in the ocean. You know what I mean? Like, how do you help people recognize that sometimes having that good luck happen and being in the right places is more important? You've just got to make decisions and commit. But when do you pull out and recognize, hey, maybe I'm fishing in the wrong spot?
Yeah. I mean, the short answer is not easy, right? It's not easy because if
Yes.
it was, then a lot of people would be having a tremendous amount of success. And I think hats
Right.
off to entrepreneurs because they're not on an easy journey, and it's very very hard, like personally, professionally, on many different fronts. I
For
think the way
sure.
to look at it is again is having that curiosity mind, which is you have to get out of the building. I feel a lot of times people are inside the building. What I mean by that is they're thinking about ideas, they're searching the internet, they have some thoughts, right? But they're not going out and really scientifically doing customer discovery, right?
Right.
And what I mean scientifically, meaning that don't lead your the person you're
Questions.
interviewing. Don't
Yeah.
have leading questions. Don't say, "Wouldn't it be great if you had a cloud cost management software to solve your problem?" Right? So like, okay, they're like, yeah, okay, that'd be nice. And then you're like, yay, and then you go build something. You have to start. You have to learn the art of that. And if you really don't know that, have some mentors. And there's a lot of
Sure.
material written on this. It's like, how do I go do market research? How do I go
Yeah.
do really objective customer discovery? And I
Yeah. How
think,
do you ask the right
how
questions?
do you ask the right question, and how do you shut up? That's the
Yeah.
hardest part, right? Because your job in a lot of these conversations is to listen, right? And if you're not listening and if you're talking, I mean, you should not be talking more than 10%, right? And the talk should simply be those
I
questions.
love it.
So I think it comes down to that, because otherwise you'll be misled. I mean, you
Yep.
will you will you will convince yourself of a lot of different things. I still remember, so there's budding entrepreneurs who want to start a company. Sometimes they come for advice, and especially
Right.
for technical founders, this is my piece of
Right.
advice, right?
Love
So
it.
I had somebody who wanted to. He was at a large company, had a very good idea and was technical, and he was kind of talking to me about the idea. And I said, "Look, listen, I
Right.
understand the idea, but you need to go out and have a bunch of conversations, a bunch of customers, and
Yeah.
talk to them. See if somebody's willing to pay for a POC or your initial version
Right.
of your software, because I think that's real. That is
Right.
something that is real evidence of somebody, right? As I say, you
As soon
can.
as money exchanges, it's
That's
like
right.
a whole new world. Yeah.
That's right. Even if the money is not huge, because at least it's
Right.
going to the system, right? You have to go to procurement and you have to have a budget
Yep.
approval. You have to do all that. And so this guy's like, "Ah, okay, well, how do I do it?" And it's like, you got LinkedIn. I mean, you got, right? So
Right.
6 months later, he came and met me again. And I'm like, yeah, so what did you do? So he said, like, well, I quit my job and I had years of saving, worth of savings. and he started showing me the software he had built. He's like, look at the
Yeah.
APIs and look at how I built the software and look it can do. And I said, well, how many customer interviews have you done? Like, have you had somebody who's willing to pay for the POC? And it's like, no, but it's been amazing. The 6 months have been amazing, me building stuff. And I was like semi angry, honestly, in that
Yeah.
situation because, like, you took a year's worth of savings, 6 months you've spent
Wasted.
building nothing,
Yeah.
because software can be built by a lot of people. You can outsource it, you can hire somebody. The
Totally.
value you're trying to bring to the table is that customer discovery. It is that sort of those interviews, that insight. And I
Right.
think that's the advice I would give is like, do the hard work, do the work that
Yes.
is uncomfortable, right? If you need to you need to secure those interviews and
Yep.
you think you need to make 100 calls a day, right?
Yep.
And if you made zero, how many calls are you behind?
Totally.
100,
Totally.
right?
Such good
So,
advice. Such good advice. Yeah.
and so sitting there and making sure your inbox is zero and your LinkedIn profile really looks good and your website is awesome is not going to move you forward. It's not.
Nope. Nope. And it truly is those first customers that drive the should I do this or should I not decisions, because they're telling you it would be so cool if it did this. It would be I think this is a waste of time. I never use that feature. And those types of feedback are the only way that you learn A, what to develop, and B, who do you want to develop for? Right? Because if you've got 3 or 4 different clients or 10 or 20 different clients that you're beta testing with, you're going to discover that, hey, you know what? This solution is way better for people in this part of my beta pool than these ones. I don't know that I want to worry about those guys. I just want to hone in on these guys because there's a lot more of them and they have more budget than these guys, right? So it comes down to client avatar discovery as well.
Yeah, and it's about the age-old painkiller versus the vitamin, right? Which is, you guys have maybe heard that analogy, which is like, a vitamin is something you will take daily, maybe sometimes you skip it, it's not a big deal, right? But
Right,
a
right,
painkiller, like if you have a splitting headache, then you
right.
need that really strong ibuprofen, right? And I think your
Yep.
job as a founder is to go find that painkiller to see, okay,
Yeah,
which set of my beta customers this is a painkiller for. They can't live without it,
totally.
right?
Totally.
They're pounding on the table and they're saying, I need this yesterday. And
Yep.
they're gonna put up with a solution that's not perfect, that still has issues.
Yep.
But the problem is so
Totally.
acute that they will do anything.
Totally. Totally. And if you're not solving a low-hanging fruit problem in the beginning, and you've got this very complicated solution set you're trying to build, start solving low-hanging fruit problems first. And as you solve low-hanging fruit problems, you'll see which high-level problem you want to solve to differentiate. Is
Right.
that fair enough? Yeah.
That's fair, and I think a lot of times, at least technical founders, they start off by saying we're building a platform, and I think that's just like a code word for me to say like you don't know what you're doing, right? Because winning the platform game is very very hard this day and age. It's extremely
Right.
hard, right? None
Right.
of the platform companies started as a platform company, so you have to find
That's
that
probably
niche.
true.
Yeah, you have to find that niche. You have to kind of solve it in a very differentiated way. You have to make sure you can monetize. You have to make sure there's enough customers in there, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that is the important part. So don't just parrot and mimic what everybody else ends up saying and doing, right?
Agreed. Agreed. And a lot of really smart companies, intelligent companies who are looking to distract their competition, they're talking about something different than what they're solving sometimes, which is a good code as you start to grow and build and try to distract your competition a little bit. You can play those games, but when you're starting, be clear, be very clear on what problem you're solving. Make sure the right people know that you're solving the problem. And that will it'll get you down that path to seeing where your growth strategy should be headed.
Absolutely. And I think, honestly, distracting competition is just a complete waste of time because you should just be focused on your customers, the problem, executing, right? So at the end of the day, if
Right,
you out execute, then you don't have to worry about like who else is doing what, right? Because
right,
a lot
right.
of times, there's marketing websites and people are claiming XYZ. You have no idea what's real, what's not,
Totally.
right? So if your strategy starts becoming like what their marketing websites are saying, and you're just
Right.
following that, then it's just not gonna pan out well for you.
It's not. It's not. Wow. Well, I got to tell you, this has been a really, really fun interview. I think that your experience in deployment of these types of solutions is fascinating. If this is something along the lines that you're interested in hearing more about, I know that you've got a lot of resources on your website on yotascale.com. And we're going to put links to all of your information down below in the show notes here. But Asim, what are the things, just in closing, would you like to suggest lessons learned or things to move forward on for people out there trying to figure out the path to scaling?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's first of all, recognize it's not easy. I think the second part we were talking about earlier, like people are putting in a lot of hours, doing a lot of hard work, but it's not yielding the
Yeah,
results that they want or expect. I think the people
right.
equation is very important. So if you want to get some people in your company, make sure they're the right people for the right stage and your context. Because I think
Yeah,
a lot
yeah,
of times I see people making a mistake where they're bringing somebody who is maybe a scale person, right?
yeah,
That knows revenue from 25 million to 100 million, but
right.
you're still trying to go from like a million to 10 million, right?
Yes.
So just know that that person will not necessarily be the right fit for you because it's still you're still in the mode of playing chess. It's not checkers, right? It's not
Yep. Yep.
repeatable. So I think that's the important part. And I think the other piece is be focus on the right metrics,
Yeah.
right? And don't focus on vanity metrics. As an example, a lot of people focus on how many visitors to the website, right?
Yeah.
Those numbers can be changed many different ways, but
Yeah.
focus on who's your core customer, what is their right profile, right?
Yep.
Where can you go find them,
Yep.
and you have to orient your strategy with respect to that. I think that's the important part
I
in it,
love
right?
that.
And
I
I think
love that.
finally have a lot of mentors, have some key
Yes.
mentors who've done it, some advisors who've done it. There is no shame in going and asking
No.
people who've been down that path and ask them how they failed and what they would do differently, and maybe talk to them about your specific particular problem. Because to be honest, it's sometimes hard to give generic advice, right? There's a lot of books and a lot
Yeah.
of material, but a lot of times the advice has to be catered to your particular situation, right?
And
That you're
it's
not able to get through.
surprising, right? And it's surprising how many of those people are willing to sit down to lunch to you and give you free advice because they've been down the journey, they've been down the path, and they like to help people in a lot
Yeah,
of
there's a lot
cases.
of good people. That's how I was able to get a lot of traction. Is like I had mentors and advisors, right, who were willing to
I love that.
sit with me and talk to me and spend their time. And at the end of the day, the
Yeah.
best thing a good mentor will do is force you to ask the right question.
Yeah.
Because a lot of
Yeah.
times, one is not asking the right question. You're asking the wrong
Yeah.
question, right?
I love it.
And I think that my best mentors have been the ones that force me to think about the question that I'm not asking.
Yep.
When I come to them with a question, which is like, hey, I'm not able to scale. Like, what can I do? And blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, the question is not, you're not able to scale. The question is something else, right? Which is,
Yeah.
maybe there is some
Solve
challenge.
this problem first before you try and solve that one over there.
Yeah. And maybe it could be
Yeah.
that, your renewals are not where they need to be. Your existing
Right.
customers are not coming back, but
Right.
you're trying to sell it to a ton more customers, but there is something fundamentally that's not working, right? That you need
I
to
love
take
it.
stock and focus on it. So I think be honest with yourself,
Love
um,
it.
and have the right people in place.
Thank you. Sam, thank you so much for taking the time to do this with me today. Our audience is very well fed today from what you delivered to us, and I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. And for those listening, please, please, please find the good mentors. Make sure you're going down the path that customers want to pay you to solve for them, and do that outreach. Make those customer conversations happen. Make sure you're not just in your own little echo chamber solving a problem that you think everyone wants when nobody may want that solution. Been there, done that. And I think too many of you are doing that right now. So get out, talk to people, talk to mentors, make this stuff happen. And Asim, Really, really deeply appreciate you taking the time to share these thoughts with us today.
My pleasure, Todd. Thank you for having me.
Hey, I hope this interview brought some serious value to you. To me, it inspired me to start thinking about the foundations, the fundamentals of my business. Am I talking to the right people? Am I getting the feedback from clients the way that I should be? Am I taking what they say and actually implementing and deploying better solutions for them? If that's something that you're not doing, take a look at yourself right now and say, I'm going to listen more to my clients and I'm going to do the things that they are asking if it's aligned with where I want to take this company. And that is the last and final thing. Make sure that you're taking your company on the path you want it to be. Don't get distracted running down dark alleys when you should be right in the sunlight, in the park, doing the thing that all your clients want to see you doing. Because sometimes we do get distracted as entrepreneurs. Sometimes we aren't listening to clients as entrepreneurs. Sometimes we think we have the better solution that no one's even asking for. And I hope that you take this minute to go jump to growthreadiness.com, take an assessment and understand where your faults are. Where are you coming short in your mindset of growth strategy for your business? And I hope we can help. Thanks so much for listening to the podcast. Go check out thegrowthreadiness.com and see if there's a solution for you. And thanks so much for taking the time to be a part of this journey with us. We'll catch up with you later. Thanks.